One of the things I've really benefited from in recovery and in trying to change into a more godly person is having an accountability plan, or just plan for short. This is a handout that we use in the group that I've been a part of in the past, and I'm just going to spend a little time going over this. I know you can't read it, but you can see it's not really very big. So the idea is being able to write something down that I can share with an accountability partner so that they can hold me accountable. They can help me to remember what I've committed to. And so the plan has some verbiage at the top. It looks like this. It says, I blank agree that I have a serious struggle with blank. I know that I cannot get better alone. I need the supernatural help of God, the Father, the Son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. I also need to be in community with other struggling believers. If I am alone, I will remain in bondage to my struggles. I choose to use this plan to help me remember what I have committed to doing, to seek healing, and to help others come alongside me and encourage me. I will modify this plan as I learn more about my triggers and what I need to do to recover. So there's three sections in the plan. The first section is called titled Sobriety, Abstinence, Recovery. And the idea is that people who get in a recovery group frequently struggle with something. It might be alcohol, it might be drugs, it might be anxiety, it might be anger, it might be sexual addiction, it might be a specific behavior like gambling, or it might be shopping, or video games, TV, anything that I might do which has become a problem for me that I either can't stop, or it's starting to take over parts of my life that it really doesn't belong in. So the idea behind a sobriety, abstinence, or recovery section is that there's a definition that I come up with for my sobriety. Now that is a very individual thing. And so it may take me a little while to figure out what it is that I want to be sober from, or what it is that I want to abstain from, or what the general term recovery looks like for me. And so let's say I struggle with sexual addiction. I'm going to put some stuff down here. There's two blanks on the piece of paper that I can start with. The idea is not that this be something that I spend a lot of time on, but an idea that this is something I can complete in 5 minutes, because the point is not to come up with a perfect plan. Instead, the point is to come up with something tangible that I can share with somebody else, so that I can get into an accountability relationship as soon as possible, so that they can start asking me accountability questions and help me figure out what I need to do differently. Perhaps I need to add something to my plan, remove something from my plan, rephrase it a little bit. There could be all sorts of things. And so it's not uncommon at all for my plan to change weekly, as long as I'm in recovery and in connection with an accountability partner who's going to be sort of holding up a mirror and saying, this is what you said you would do. What are you actually doing? What do you want to do differently? What would look like progress for you? So let's say I struggle with sexual addiction. I might say, I will not masturbate. I will not look at pornography. Those are possibilities that would go in a sobriety definition. Suppose I struggle with overeating, and I've decided that the particular area of my struggle that I need to change is how I deal with sweets. And so I may put in something that says, I will not eat more than 2 cookies in a 24-hour period. Or perhaps I have a problem with anger. And so I could put in, I will not be angry, but realistically, that may not be possible. And one of the things we want to do in our accountability plan is always put something in the plan which is doable, which is measurable, and which is relevant. We'll talk about those things more in the future. So let's say if I struggle with anger, I may not put down, I won't be angry. What I'll say is, when I'm angry, I won't throw anything, or I won't raise my voice in anger. Another area in recovery that people often struggle with is something called codependency. And we'll maybe try to define that more in another video, but the idea is codependency is the unhealthy things I do because of people in my life. It might be me trying to control other people. It might be me trying to avoid other people. It could be the yelling that we talked about with anger, raising my voice in anger to try to control other people. So I may want to find something in the physical universe that I do which means codependency for me. And so, using the anger example, I'm codependent if I raise my voice in anger trying to control someone else. So I might put down, I will not raise my voice in anger. And that might be a codependency definition of sobriety for me on day one. The next section here is called boundaries. And again, I have two little blanks there so you don't feel like you have to do 17 different things for boundaries. The idea behind boundaries is I may not be doing something wrong with a particular behavior, or I might not classify it as a sin, but there's a certain freedom in my life that I've learned if I exercise that freedom, I wind up breaking my sobriety, my abstinence, my recovery. And so boundaries are frequently about willingly giving up my freedoms in order to protect my sobriety. So let's look at the example of sexual addiction. So sexual addiction, I might say, well, if my definition says I won't look at pornography, maybe one of the ways I get pornography is I go to the internet. And I found that if I go to the internet without an intention or without a plan or without a finite amount of time, I ultimately wind up looking at pornography. And so what I say in my plan is my boundary is I will not use the internet without a specific purpose, or I will not use the internet in a room alone, or I will not use the internet for more than 1 hour at a time. Whatever is measurable, doable, and relevant to my recovery, that I'm going to give up a certain freedom in order to protect my sobriety. Now, as far as eating, let's say we use the cookie example. I won't eat more than 2 cookies a day. Well, maybe my thing is that my struggle, I lose it in the grocery store. And so I'm walking down the aisle getting some bread. I'm walking down the aisle getting some soup. I'm walking down the aisle. Oh, look, I'm on the cookie aisle. How did that happen? I'm just going to have 2 cookies. Well, maybe 2 boxes of cookies, or maybe 20 boxes of cookies. And so one of the things I might put down as a boundary is I will not go down the cookie aisle, or I will only go to the cookie aisle after I've called my accountability partner, and then I will call my accountability partner after I leave the cookie aisle. Something along those lines to give myself boundaries around putting myself in an area of temptation. So those are ideas of how I might have boundaries for myself, giving up a freedom to protect my sobriety. The third thing here is it says goals. And again, there's just 2 blanks there. The idea is to not have to come up with 30,000 goals, but to just come up with a few. And goals are a specific part of recovery. The idea is that my addiction, whether it's sex or cookies or codependency or alcohol or drugs, it provides some sort of function in my life, some sort of comfort. If I just take away that comfort, then I'm sort of like stressed, and I'm almost a ticking time bomb because I can only live without comfort for so long before I just go ballistic. And so one of the things I might do is I have to figure out how to replace the function provided by my addiction with something healthy. There's a verse in the Bible, I don't have the reference on top of me, but it talks about a person has a demon and the demon is cast out, but then the demon goes and finds a few friends and comes back and finds the house swept and clean. That's sort of the idea with addictions, is if I give up one addiction, I might come back with the same addiction, or I might switch addictions, but I really haven't made any forward progress. One of the things to keep in mind about recovery is it's always about something other than what I struggle with. If I struggle with sexual addiction, my struggle is not really about sex. If I struggle with eating, it's really not about food. If it's with alcohol, it's really not about drinking. My recovery is about a deeper core issue. And one of the things that leads to recovery is learning how to connect in a healthy way. So one of the things we say is recovery is all about connection. Healthy connection with God and healthy connection with others. And so one of the things I might put down here on my goals is something that represents connecting with others. So I might write down that I will go to a recovery meeting once a week, or some people go once a day. Whatever it takes to represent forward progress and to keep myself learning to develop connection. I might say I'm going to make a certain number of phone calls per week. And I write that down as a commitment in my plan. I might say I'm going to make one phone call a week, or three phone calls a week, or five phone calls a week. One of the things I'm going to avoid doing is saying I'm going to make 52 phone calls a week. And because a lot of the times when I'm trying to change a behavior, I go overboard and I make a commitment that's not possible. So that's one of the things we remind ourselves is that when I have a recovery plan, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do something doable, relevant, and measurable. I'm not trying to do something impossible. I shouldn't write down, I will start being perfect on March the 30th. It's just not going to work. And so I want to commit to something that I'll actually do. So better for me to honestly commit to one phone call a week than kid myself and say I'm going to make 14 a week. So those are kind of the ideas behind the three sections: sobriety, abstinence recovery, boundaries, and then goals. Now, if you look at the bottom real close, you'll see that there's a place to put the date and there's a place to put a signature. The purpose for that is really important. It's very easy for me on today to feel very gung ho. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to change. I'm going to let God transform me. So I write down all sorts of things and then I put it on a shelf and never look at it again. And then I don't look at my recovery plan regularly. I don't do anything to use it. And it just becomes a piece of dust gathering paper. And so one of the things I do is always put down a date at which I wrote this recovery plan so that my accountability partner can say, oh, I see it's been 3 months since you revised your recovery plan. Is there anything that should be changed in the last 3 months based on your experience? Another thing is I put a signature. Now, the signature is important in the sense that this recovery plan is meant to be what I'm actually doing. Not that I wish I was doing, not that if I were a great person I'd be doing, or a perfect person, or a holy person, or a godly person. The point here is that I'm making a commitment to do something different this week going forward that I believe is going to lead me to a healthier lifestyle. So, in short, that's a review of what an accountability plan, or if you look closely, it just says plan, what a plan is all about. And so, the quickest thing I can do is sit down and in 5-10 minutes write that out, put my name, put a name to my struggle, put the date, put my signature down, and give that to my accountability partner. And if I can get three, I can give it out to three people, and there'll be three people asking me questions. And that gives me that much more time and chances to practice connection. Well, thank you for listening. I'm Dwayne, and this was a brief description of accountability plans.